Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another video for you in the British line, and this is the new Tier 8 light tank, the FV301. New because it is a new tech line. There are light tanks in this new tech line following the Comet, and they go from Tier 8 right up to Tier 10. As always, we will have a look at tech spec, we will have a look at some gameplay, see the tank in action, discuss tactics, how to play it, and then we'll have a recap at the end where we summarise all of our review of this tank. Tech spec, as always, we'll use blitz.com, which is a great website for all blitzers. I'm a patron of that, and I think if you're not using it, you should. Great information for all blitzers there. Now, this tank, as we said, it follows the Comet. It's a new tech strand, let's say, rather than a full tech line, in that it's only tiers 8 to 10. This tier 8 light tank is excellent. It's really a wonderful, wonderful tank, and it's exactly what you want from a light tank. It's ticking all the boxes, and it does exactly what it says in the tin. And if you love playing light tanks, you're definitely going to enjoy this tank, and indeed the tanks that follow it in this line. Now, but playing light tanks is difficult, and if you haven't done it before or you haven't played them for a while, I would suggest that you look at the light tank guide that we have here on the channel, and there's going to be a link in the description, because light tanks have a specific role in the game, and if you don't fulfill those roles, then you have a good chance of losing the game, and you're also going to find it very frustrating. So check that out if you feel the need to. Now, there are two gun types: there's a tier 7 and tier 8. For those of us who live in the 21st century and don't know what the fuck a 17 pounder or a 20 pounder is, it's a 76.2mm and an 83.4mm, and the top gun is needed for the actual DPM as opposed to the theoretical DPM, which is listed in the tank stats. But actual DPM is the damage done by shots that actually pen, and you need the higher penetration numbers to get your actual DPM up, so therefore you need that tier 8 gun, especially if you're up tiered. Now, AP is your standard round, give you 226mm of pen and 190 plus damage points if you use gun rammer. Obviously you get higher pen numbers if you are running calibrated shells, but of course then you lose out on your rate of fire. Now, your Pramo on this tank is APCR, giving you 258mm of pen and 160 damage points, and HE gives you 42mm of pen and 250 damage points. But it's a low caliber gun, so not huge pen numbers on the HE. But that is not applicable to the next tank in line, the VIII CR, which we'll review in the next video, so you can have a look at that then. Now, muzzle velocity is 10-20 meters per second. If you use supercharge, which I recommend, you get it up to 13-26 meters per second. Why is that important? Well, penetration, as we know, is largely dependent on muzzle velocity. APCR muzzle velocity is much higher. It's 1658 meters per second, up from 1275 meters per second when you use supercharge. So therefore, if you want to fire at a fast moving target, or a target which is further away or moving, then APCR, maybe select that because the shell moves a lot faster. Reload with gun rammer is 4.2 seconds, 4.5 seconds with calibrated shells. Gun depression is 10 degrees, 20 degrees of elevation, therefore the gun alignment on this tank is excellent. And when we look at the armor profile, we'll discuss the gun depression again and how this applies to tactics and strategy in this tank. Now, the tank is 62 kilometers per hour top speed, and it has 20 kilometers per hour in reverse. So the tank is agile and mobile. Now, when you look here, comparing it to other light tanks, it looks like its power to weight ratio in traverse is not very good, but that's compared to light tanks, for example, like the RE251, because there's not so many light tanks in tier 8, right? If you compare it to normal tanks, to all tanks in tier 8, it's actually really, really good, and traverse is very, very good too. Now, the concealment numbers are amazing. So basically, if you take something like an RE251, which has one of the best view ranges in its tier of 304 meters, it still has to get within 219 meters of view when you're moving or when you're stopped to spot you up. So concealment numbers are really, really good. Now, when you fire, of course, you blow your camo numbers, and it goes up to 279 meters within. That's the distance I need to get within to spot you up. So you lose, considerable amount of your concealment numbers. But when you're moving, because your light tank, when you're moving, and your concealment is exactly the same as when you're stopped. So bear that in mind. This tank has great concealment. I would run black tea for view range and improved fuel for agility. Very important when you are running a light tank. You want to max out your view range and max out your maneuverability and agility. Now, speaking about the tactics of this tank, right? So it doesn't really have any armor, right? Light tanks don't have armor. You're not expecting it to. However, it has a couple of things going for it. It has that gun depression, right? It also has this strong gun mantlet on the front of the tank, which takes up quite a bit of the turret. Also, it's a very, very small target. So what does that say? Well, that suggests to us that good tactics in this tank are peek-a-boom, particularly hold down peek-a-boom. You can see here, tiny target, most of it's the gun mantlet, very difficult to pen to hit, and if you're moving backwards and forwards, almost impossible to hit when the turret's front on. So peek-a-boom, but particularly peek-a-boom hold down, this tank is excellent. What else is good at? Well, obviously with those concealment numbers, you can scout, you can get out there and spot up the enemy. What I would say to you though is if there is an RU-251 on the other team, you need to be extra careful because he will spot you up with his superior view range, particularly if you fire before you spot him up, so just be aware of that. You can see here the tank does have a little bit of armor, particularly if you're top tier, but let's assume that you're not going to bounce any shots, and anything you do bounce then as a bonus. But as I said, if you're hull down and you're rolling up and down, firing using that gun depression, this tank is very effective. It's also very, very effective at brawling. The mobility, the reload, its agility, power to weight ratio, etc., all make this an excellent brawler. We'll see this in the gameplay. There's a couple of brawls, circle of death situations that we get into. Even against agile and maneuverable medium tanks, this tank is very, very effective. So in terms of strategy, well, firstly, take a step back for a second, guys. Please watch the light tank guide, how to play light tanks. The one on channel description has the link for you, because if you're not familiar with light tanks, you will suffer in this. But once you understand the role of the light tank, then this tank is great at fulfilling that role and you won't be disappointed. So getting out there, spotting, using the concealment numbers, scouting for your team, making sure your team know where the enemy is. You can do peek-a-boom, sniping, particularly if you go hold down, as we discussed, given that small turret. Even when you're moving, by the way, if you're moving at top speed, this is a small target. It's difficult to hit, especially, you know, for big heavies and TDs. If you're moving fast, it's difficult to get to hit this tank. It's not an easy target. You're most vulnerable, of course, when you're stopped, when you're in close to the enemy. Then, of course, you're very vulnerable because you don't have any armor, and you're going to get hit for big alpha rolls. But when it's moving at top speed, when it's utilizing those concealment numbers, this tank is very effective. And if you want to do peek-a-boom, if you can get hull down, it's really effective. Now we're going to have a look at some gameplay. It's Desert Sands. It's supremacy game on Desert Sands. This is actually a mastery game in this tank, so you're going to see this tank fulfilling its role really effectively. Now we are up tiered in this game, so there are some tier 9s in here as well. Now I check the setup as always, and I decide, given the number of fast movers in each team, that I am going to support my team and go to A. You can see here, you know, how quickly the tank takes off. A power to weight ratio play there, getting up to its top speed of 62 kilometers an hour pretty quickly. You know, gets over to tough terrain, hilly terrain, as there is here on the left hand side of Desert Sands, very well. And now we've spotted up the enemy, doing our job very well. We do take a hit there. I was quite surprised I got that hit. That shell penned me, actually, because I thought I was just putting over a very small target, but the guy made a good shot, penned me. But now I'm going to start doing some damage now. So we've spotted up the reds here. We know where they are, and now it's just a matter of, can we do some damage. Now the gun handling is good. See that? Bam, nice shot, small target. And of course, you reload so quickly then. Put another round into the BC. The Batchat, he's preoccupied, put another round in. And you know, when you are when you are in a situation where there's multiple targets like this tank excels. And you can see here, tiny targets, even when they're moving, the gun handling doesn't let you down. Really good. Roll back in. This is really kind of playing this tank to its strengths, utilizing the rate of fire that it has, the 4.2 second reload, utilizing its maneuverability, utilizing its ability to manipulate terrain as we have here. So with my gun depression and my agility and my mobility, this scenario here on this map is really good for this tank. Saw there again how good the gun handling is. And the other thing about this tank is, and I think it's worth noting, is that the rate of fire is so good, your reload is so short, that you can actually afford to take risky snapshots, because if it doesn't go through, you don't have to wait 10 seconds for a reload like you do on some tanks. You reload it again in a jiffy, right? It's even faster reload than the RU251 or the Bavarian Bulldog, and you can see here, so therefore you can just snapshots off, and if it don't go through, so what, you reload it again in a few seconds and you can go again, right? So you can afford to take some risks in shooting. Now see here in this brawl situation here now, the T-44, he's in a bit of a predicament. He's stuck in between two tanks. But again, you can see utilizing my maneuverability, my superior reload, my superior agility, maneuverability compared to T-44, and also I know that he doesn't have very good gun depression, and he is finding it really difficult to get a shot on me. And this is why in the reviews I often talk about gun alignment. Gun alignment is your ability to align your gun with the target, with the enemy. This tank has fantastic gun alignment, as we discussed. So the depression and the elevation give this fantastic gun alignment. The T-44 has far inferior gun alignment, and you can see here that he suffers from that in this sort of mini brawl, right? He is finding it really difficult to align his gun with my tank, whereas I don't have that problem. No matter where he goes, I'm able to line up my gun and get a shot into him. You see here again, he's suffering from the gun depression, and can't just get it down on time. He thinks he has a shot, but then when I go over that dip, he loses it and he fluffs the shot again. Very frustrating for him. Now your natural instincts in those situations are that you keep moving, bobbing, weaving, jinking to make it difficult. But what the T-44 should have done was gone against his natural instincts, popped himself up against the back of that hill, and then that would make it much easier for him to align his gun with me, and therefore probably would have been more effective in that brawl situation. Slow this right down here. We're looking at this in slow motion, so you can see again the gun handling, really good. Distant shot, small target, makes it no problem at all. Gun handling on this tank is really good. And I think, as I said, even if you fluff a few shots, miss them, it doesn't really matter. You can afford to risk taking a few shots because the reload is so good. What does it matter? Go for it. Plus, you have a big ammo rack, so there's lots of shells. You carry a lot of shells, so you can afford to miss a couple of shots. It's no big deal. Again, you're going to see the maneuverability of the tank at play here, and again also its agility, getting around, up, down, over those hills. Now you see the VK here is doing what the T-44 should have done, right? He stopped, backed up, so I can't get fully around him. He's doing really well here, and look, eventually I get him, but I mean he had a 3v1 situation. But that's what the T-44 should have done there. Back up, make sure that your gun alignment is maximized, and then you get a few shots off of me, and you have a bigger gun, going to do damage, maybe even blow some modules. So that's what he was thinking. That's what he done. That's what the T-44 should have done there. But again, I think the maneuverability of this tank is a great strength. You saw it play to its strengths there. Saw how well it can be formed. It's in its element on those hills, where you can utilize the gun alignment, the speed, the maneuverability, the fact that it's a small target, and that great rate of fire. And you saw there, perfect. That game was perfect. That terrain was perfect for this tank. Mastery of Badge delivered, I think, was like over 3.6k of damage. Not bad at all for tier 8. And yeah, I think just an overall good example of how to utilize and play this tank to its strengths. Now let's have a quick recap on this tank. Let's recap on all the things that we've discussed so far. This is an excellent light tank. Everything you want from a light tank. And if you are not enjoying this as a light tank, you're doing something wrong. So therefore, perhaps watch the light tank guide that we have, the link in the description. Because playing light tanks is very, very different. They're very unforgiving. You have a specific role to play, and therefore you need to understand that if you want to play the tank well. Run black tea, pudding and tea, and improved fuel, which are provisions to max out the performance of the tank. I use gun rammer, but you can use calibrated shells if you wish, but I always use gun rammer. Supercharge and vertical stabilizer, because you're going to fire a lot when you're moving. And I like to fire as much as possible. That's why I run gun rammer, but calibrated shells is also an option if you prefer that setup on your tank. But vertical stabilizer is important. I was running vertical stabilizer there, and you can see that it's extremely important when you're moving around, and you're going to fire a lot when you're moving in this tank. The turret armor and the gun depression are really give you great tactical options. Also, if you're utilizing that hull down, you're such a small target, very difficult to hit. The mobility of this tank is excellent. Its view range is low for a light tank, so just be aware of that. As we mentioned, if you're up against an RU-251, be more careful. But having said that, you do have excellent concealment numbers, and these also apply when you're moving. There's a specific thing around light tanks. Concealment numbers are the same as when you're moving and when you're stopped. There's no other tank type like that. So just be aware of that. You only blow your camo numbers when you fire. So if you are firing and the enemy is near, beware, you're going to get spotted up. I would use engine accelerator too. It helps with brawling and helps max out the overall performance of this tank. And as you saw there in that brawl, that combined with the rate of fire, which is 4.2 seconds or 4.5 seconds if you use calibrated shells, it's just excellent. And of course that allows you to make those snapshots, to take some risky shots, because as we said, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be reloading in a couple of seconds, so you don't have to be as careful with your shot selection as you do with other gun systems. So I hope you found that useful. The music was a Wagner Flight of Valkyries, made famous of course in the movie Apocalypse Now. And the music during the tech spec was The Horde from the Warcraft original soundtrack, which is actually a great soundtrack and a pretty decent movie too. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And I guess all that remains for me to say is please wear your masks, because we still live in Corona times. So keep your masks on and your pants off.